some sound, even if you have your speakers on mute, so you still get the warning sound.
So if you go down the bottom right corner of the little speaker, and then you can hit X to.
Yeah.
Okay, so we are on recording.
Still will do that. I wonder if there's a way to get.
Okay. Sorry, it looked like we had another person waiting to get in. Hey, good afternoon, committee members and other parties of interest. This is the second evaluation committee meeting and possible scoring for requests for proposals RFP-24-24865 for security risk assessment for the Library Services Department. This is being held by means of communications media technology. Provisions have been made for members of the public desiring to have access to view the meeting, and public attendees must remain on mute, and please turn your cameras off. Thank you. For the record, the meeting is being recorded and the recording will be made available after the meeting is ended. Please be advised that our tone of silence is still in effect and shall end the earlier of 5 business days after the county posts notice of intent to award or the solicitation has been canceled by the county. All questions, comments, concerns must be directed to my attention and my attention only. I don't believe we do not have any technical advisors online, so I can go ahead and skip that part. My name is Sakina Ford and I'm the chief buyer for the project. Again, for the record, this meeting is being recorded and has been publicly noticed. At this time, I'll have each of the committee members go ahead and introduce themselves for the record, beginning with our committee chair, Jennifer.
My name is Jen Cable. I am the project manager of safety and security for library services.
My name is Wendy Grimes. I am the contracts manager for library services.
Alfred, the security management and facilities department.
So for the record, we received 13 proposals, with the proposals from Paladin Defense Group, Inc. and Resilient Digital Ecosystems being deemed unacceptable. The remaining 11 proposals were from the following companies, which I'm going to bring up and read. Adams Engineering, Climbing Globally Solutions, LLC, Collaborative Technical and Comprehensive Security Business, LLC, Cyber Crush, LLC, Guidepost Solutions, Jupiter Capital Management, NSA Cyber, Rosen Security Consulting, LLC, SRNC, LLC, Telgean Engineering and Consulting, LLC, and Titan Global Enterprises, Inc. The committee did complete an initial evaluation on January 7th, 2025, and then received oral presentations by the top 2 ranked proposers, which was Guidepost Solutions and Rosen Security Security Consulting, LLC. These 2 proposals will be reevaluated today based on the information provided in the response and the oral presentations that were received, as they each correlate to the requirements and the evaluation criteria set forth in the solicitation. So the committee will be reviewing the original scoring, and based on the submitted documentation as well as the oral presentations that were received, we'll revisit this scoring based on the 2 criteria that you are scoring, which is criteria 1, proposers' understanding of the scope and objectives, technical approach, and work plan presented, which includes your project plan and project timeline with details about the resources that will be applied to the project. That's a maximum of 35 points. And then criteria 2, proposers' organization and staff qualifications and experience, expertise, and completion of projects similar in scope and size and involving public library security, a maximum of 35 points. For the record, the initial scoring that was reviewed was the Guidepost Solutions scoring in criteria 1 of 35 and criteria 2 of 35. And then for Rosen Security in criteria 1, 34, and criteria 2, 35. So those are the scores that we are revisiting today based on the oral presentations that were received and the information that was provided. So for the committee, just remember that those are the two criteria that you want to look at, and not take into consideration any other pieces of the proposal. The pricing and the DMVE review stuff was completed separately from your evaluation. So you are just revisiting those two areas to determine, based on what you heard in those presentations, if you make a determination to move a scoring or not move a scoring, whatever that may be. That is where we want to go into those discussions based on what you heard on top of what you already reviewed. So we're focusing specifically on just those two categories. I'm going to let Jennifer lead the discussion based on what you heard in those two oral presentations. And then as a committee, you guys can make a determination on how you feel those scores should remain, move, whatever that may be for those two proposers. If you want to go ahead and get started, Jennifer, I'll let you go ahead and have some time to discuss.
Thanks, Sakina.
Sure.
So, I'll kind of go over my notes I took from the presentation, and then we'll kind of go around and do the same, kind of discuss on what we think and if we want to rescore them differently or keep them at the same. And then we'll move on to the second evaluation meeting that we heard and do the same. So for Rosen Security Consulting LLC, some of the things that stood out. So they have like a 16 members that'll be on the project together. And what stood out is that Michael mentioned that the team has worked together a lot and completed together to over 200 assessments, just the team that will be working on our project, which assures me that the team we get is familiar with working together and will communicate well together to provide a good quality service. They will support the implementation that they suggest and want to provide any kind of ongoing support. Very much stress the fact that they want to have a long-term kind of relationship, and anything after kind of the initial assessments that take place, stressed wanting to provide continued support. Stress that wanted to provide solutions geared toward prevention first over reactive solutions. I think that's key. A lot of security implementation can be geared toward how to react and instead of being proactive and preventative. We'll list the prioritization of all the recommendations and which one should be implemented first based on the risk level. As a methodology is defensible. Recognizes that each of our libraries will face different threats and have different risks. So he mentioned that it will not be like a blanket strategy against all of our libraries that they will be wanting us to implement or suggesting for us to implement, but that each branch will have its own kind of set of implementations that are recommended based on the threat level and risks of those branches. Put a big focus on the human factor, talking about how that doesn't get included a lot when it comes to risk assessments or security in general, targeting focus. So really bringing the significance of the human factor of things and not just focusing on physical measures or security technologies. As a detailed layered security strategy, mentioning that not a single security solution is effective in and of itself. That you needed to have a layered strategy. Talked about how be a transparent project management process. So being able to have access to their software to see every detail of what is happening when, so we really be able to follow along throughout the process very well. Always know when something's going on, what step they're on, who's doing what, when it's being completed. They plan on gathering law enforcement data and using CrimeCast to identify crime forecasting and what's expected to happen in the future. They will provide an estimated budget for their recommendations, claiming that they have a 95% range accuracy for the budget. They will at the end present to everyone that is needed, including any kind of government clients, and plan to have a progress meeting every 2 weeks. They gave us their central point of contact that we would have during the project and for us to communicate with and for then communicate with us. They would provide an individual report for each library and an organizational report to summary findings from each library. So it's like giving two reports there. We would have the chance to review the draft reports and be able to communicate kind of any changes, and then they would be able to update those and we'd be able to get them back afterwards. And they did mention that if we chose that we needed more libraries completed, that it could add potentially 2 to 3 weeks to the timeline, but would still fit it within a 6-month timeline that we had in the first place. When it came to kind of the question time, we asked how many libraries that they've done specifically in Texas, since they said they did a lot in Texas. Specifically in Dallas, he mentioned that they did 50 to 54 library risk assessments in Dallas, but they've done over 100 just in Texas alone. And that they addressed homeless and drug-related activities in the libraries in Texas with places that had no law enforcement or security presence. Mentioned that some of those libraries encouraged criminal activity, so they had to come up with ways to discourage that criminal activity. Mentioned situational awareness and crisis response training that they can suggest, being able to meet people where they're at, which I think is key when our staff are interacting with any member of the public, any customers that come into the library. It's important that they are encouraged to meet people where they're at, not knowing what situation that they're going through. Allowing people to be both seen and heard. He informed us that the libraries they have done assessments for have implemented their recommendations. For most part, all of them have implemented the critical level recommendations. And then they stated that after the assessment period, that they would be able to provide us with information on trainings and what other resources we would have that would be able to come in, right? Some extra vendors and such. So, what notes did you have about who listed out to you?
Well,
Their
they're
presentation.
pretty much the same thing, so. Covered on a lot of what we saw in their proposal, which was good, a very consistent presentation of what they do in their efforts. So I felt, I can't say numbers. Did you?
Yeah, I mean, another thing, like what Jennifer covered there, you could do a quarter.
She got
Yeah, I like that they mentioned a risk-based strategy because all sites are not the same. And that certainly I think that's correct. Also, I like that Michael talked about having project management software that we can view so we can see where they are at any one time. And, the use of SharePoint and the secure cloud to be able to look at documents they have out there at any given time. And I'm also, you talked about Dallas, I had Garland written down there, which I think is the Dallas suburb, and we asked about results of implementation of their recommendations, and he mentioned, having city marshals brought in, which are like law enforcement officers, I think, so we have implementation of SEP10 and then proactive CCTV, which is just instead of just reactive. So that's kind of, so I add to your recap, which is.
Yeah, I think his presentation followed their scope that they presented, and he was able to defend everything that was included in the proposal and kind of expanded on when we asked our questions. And provided excellent resources. Again, that the project management resource would be huge. The SharePoint and their use of the CAP index that he mentioned for the crime mapping for each branch specifically. I thought that would be really cool. Very helpful. Any other things you want to mention before we go on to rescoring them? further criteria?
We talked about that, Mr.
Mr. Jesus. Do you want more?
Yeah, rescore, we just rescore Rosen. What can we talk about?
You deal with each one individually.
Okay,
You're not comparing against each other. You're just looking at the scores for each based on their oral presentation.
He was very honest and forthright about his experiences, working with other municipalities. For example, recommending in a highly violent, area, library, putting up the.
We need me to speak up.
Oh, not picking up now, okay. Should I start over? Okay. So I liked how he was very forthright and honest about his experiences working with other municipalities and libraries. For example, in one case, mentioning that a recommendation was to put, the shielding in place, and the reception of that, and just very honest about those experiences. And how they went over on the implementation side of things and recommendations, the actual experience itself.
Yeah, the impression I got from him in this presentation to kind of back the proposal is just the level of experience in his team have. And, you know, being, you know, in business for like 15 years and, you know, just in Texas, he said that they had did over 100 libraries and risk assessments, and that's just Texas. So, you know, they've done extensive library assessment experience. So that's key. They get like have the tools to be able to provide excellent assessments and be able to assist what we're looking for. Yes, that or. Okay. So criteria 1. We previously scored Rosen at a 34, and criteria 2, we previously scored them at a 35 out of 35. Following the presentation, you have any updates or changes you would like to make to the scoring for criteria 1? Wait.
good change.
No change. So for Rosen Security Consulting, criteria 1 remain at 34. For criteria 2, I would have no change.
No change.
So for criteria 2, Rosen Security Consulting will remain at 35. Okay. The next we'll discuss guidepost solutions, talk about the presentation we had, kind of go through the same process. So some of the notes, I took note, you know, they have some local offices in Palm Beach, Miami, so I think that is, you know, beneficial being local. 14 years as guidepost, so a good length of time of experience there. They said they have a long-term or focus on long-term relationship with clients, so they are geared toward continuing relationships and being able to be utilized further than just the initial projects. They have their 4-element methodology, which is physical, operational, technology, and environment in workplace. They mentioned they do like a nighttime assessment, which analyzes the light. They focus on foreseeability and consistency. They follow the ASIS standards and guidelines. They stress that they know that libraries need to be open and welcoming, not a fortress or someplace that looks like a jail or something that no one wants to enter. They utilize deceptive protocols as a guide. They mentioned that they will prioritize any of their recommendations based on the level of risk. The data that they provide with the threat assessments is provided to a psychologist and psychiatrist who then uses that information to provide help with how to reach out to like homeless and deal with those kind of homeless and mental health kind of situations and customers of ours. They use the CrimeCast system to analyze crime in the area. They also mentioned that working on the community outreach kind of meeting plan and how to get the community involved. The other unique thing that really stood out is the perception survey that staff can take it to provide their anonymous input on safety and security of the library, but it can also be provided for the public, which I think would be very unique to get their input. And will also show, our customers that we are taking steps to ensure their safety as well, making sure that the environment they're in is safe and secure for everyone. So that was really unique. They talked about, when it came to the question time, and how I think you asked about the perception survey, and if they've implemented libraries, and they said it's been successful with other libraries, and that when they've given it to the public, it's been mostly actually really positive feedback from the public, which is always kind of nice to hear. When it comes to their psychologists and psychiatrists, talks about like helping out with like policy and procedure development and getting like training processes from them. When it came to communicating and how often that would happen, they were flexible, meeting weekly or every couple weeks. They use Teams as well, kind of to track progress, use Smartsheet, file cloud system. Weekly meetings are preferred to be virtual from what I understood, but they will do in person as well. Their site assessments and interviews with staff on site will obviously be in person. When I asked how many libraries overall they conducted, they said about 280 libraries total. And their team has worked together on other projects, so they are familiar with working together as a team as a whole. And that is what I have for them.
I had pretty much everything there too. But the things that you hit on the perception survey, which I thought was a great tool, that maps back to category 1. And then the other thing, when we asked them about it and they explained the mental health professional consultants they have on team, 2 medical doctors of different disciplines with incredible backgrounds, I thought really was a powerful piece of both 1 and 2, categories 1 and 2. So
Definitely has all those resources that we bring in to really help with.
yeah, knowing that is that mental health crisis is a player in our library security issues.
And I do like that they have the concentric rings, the 4 rings recognizing environmental place as a book.
Any other comments or concerns before we go to score them again? No. So for guidepost solutions, criteria 1. Any changes or updates you would like to stay the same? For me, I'll hold the same.
Same.
So for guidepost solutions, criteria 1, we will hold the same at 35. For criteria 2, I am going to hold the same.
Same.
For criteria 2, holding the same at 35.
So I'm gonna do a revisit on all of the scores, just so that they can be read out loud for the final meeting. I do have Adams Engineering Solutions LLC with a total score, including pricing and bonus points for DMBE at 38.48. Climbing Globally Solutions LLC with a total score of 34.36. Collaborative Technical and Comprehensive Security Business Consulting LLC with a score of 62.15. CyberCrush LLC with a full score of 17.99. Guidepost Solutions with a total score of 78.63. Jupiter Capital Management with a total score of 37.39. NSA Cyber with a total score of 45.00. Rosen Security with a total score of 78.55. SRMC LLC with a total score of 72.4. Telgian Engineering and Consulting LLC with a total score of 57.93. And Titan Global Enterprises, Inc. with a total score of 35.31. The committee all agree with the final tally?
Yes.
Okay, just wanted to be sure of that. All right, so since we have come to a final consensus score, I will go ahead and prepare to print the scoring sheet for you guys to sign off on. We will work through the executive summary and recommendations based on the meeting that you guys have just held. Do we have any other questions from the committee that you have process-wise or anything? Okay. All right, I appreciate everybody for attending. We are going to go ahead and consider this meeting closed and complete, and I will turn off the recording. Thank you all for attending.